as we do this special webinar today, I want to give credit to Brady Hughes, who online in one of the webinars simply said, you know, we need one session devoted entirely just to teaching activities. And as we started to think about that, it became really clear, maybe to several of us, but at least in my head, that that's a wonderful thing to do. It's very appealing, it's very attractive, and it's also one of the slipperiest slopes we can try to walk on. Why do I say that? Because time and again, over the years, I've seen myself, I've seen other people have activities that are just captivating. And then somehow the point that the activity was trying to make to bring the principal understanding deeper to an individual, be it an adult or a child, was lost. So when we take on this today, it occurred to me that we really need to keep in mind something that has become very ordinary for me now as we've done this webinar series, to just remind myself there really are, in ordinary people's language, 3 phases to, in a sense, bringing the principles into the world. And the first is that we as individuals need to learn the principles. The second, which is very counter to what educators typically think, is that we have to spend time living the principles so that it's second nature to us. It is a way of life. And when that is accomplished, then we are naturally motivated. We don't choose. We are naturally motivated to begin sharing the principles. And if we keep that order in mind, that I have to learn, live, share, and I'll know when I'm off, when I've lost it, and it'll show up in what I'm doing in my life or in my teaching, in my relationships. And another thing that's challenging for us in this particular webinar is that this is the start of the school year, kind of all over the world. And I see Nancy Horner sitting there nodding her head, and I can only believe that in her office, she is hearing echoes out in the hallway of all the students at the middle school that are trying to find their way at break, still being mixed up, faculty that are new, that are very seasoned. There's so much going on. So we had to figure out, how do we solve this problem? There will be video clips at times today in order to bring representative educators in and to accommodate some of the crazy time schedules that we have. So we're going to begin by setting, in a sense, the context in which activities can successfully fit into sharing the principles in an educational setting by asking Brett to play a video of Dean Rees-Evans way off in Australia. We pre-recorded a couple of days ago because Dean needed to be in bed at this time. So would you share with us Dean's clip?
So when Kathy asked me this question about what activity that I thought would be most useful for people to hear, the thing that kept coming back to mind over and over again was a day when I went into a science classroom. And this was very early on to me. It was probably in the first couple of weeks of meeting Roger Mills and beginning my training with him. And it was a really difficult classroom. A really difficult classroom. The kids were they just come back from break, from recess, and they were probably loaded with sugar, and they were jumping up and down and getting out of their seats. And I looked at them and thought, oh my God, what am I going to do in this situation? How am I going to handle this? You know, I mean, it wasn't something I hadn't seen before, but this was, you know, a pretty bad example, you know, a pretty bad example of a class. And I found myself kind of beginning to get lost in my thinking about how I was going to try and sort this out. And this is why I'm sharing this story, because I think it's probably the most useful thing that I saw, and probably incredibly useful for anybody in a classroom situation like this. So what actually occurred to me when I was in that, right in the middle of it, was something that I had heard Sid say. And it was to the effect of, or what I'd read that Sid had written, which was to the effect of, ignore your children. And I kind of suddenly, in that moment, realized what he really meant. And my mind just went really quiet. And I looked down at the work that I needed to share with these children and had a quick read while the mayhem around me continued. And it was like everything just went really quiet inside me. And then the magic, I saw the magic of how that actually works, because the quieter my mind became, the quieter the kids in the class became. And I'm looking down, and suddenly I look up, and everybody's beginning to sort of move around and settle down and get ready for the lesson. And then I was able to speak. Then there was enough quiet in the room to be able to speak to the children. And as I said, I use that as an example because it was such a powerful lesson for me to see what Sid really meant by the simplicity of this understanding. That really it's not so much about what we do with the children that we work with, but more about the state of mind that we find ourselves in. Because when our mind is quiet, when our mind is calm and engaged, then that's what comes back to us from the classroom. Now I'm not going to try and tell teachers that this happens all the time. I have been in many classrooms where the best I can do is to contain them in the room and keep things, you know, keep children from hurting themselves or hurting each other or doing any damage. And that's, you know, there are lessons that happen like that in probably most schools. I think I've been in one or two schools where I don't think it must happen so rarely. It would really stand out. Probably private schools that I've taught in. But generally, I think most teachers will have come across this kind of situation where the children are almost out of control. But it always comes back to that, the state of mind that we're in will reflect what we're experiencing from the children. And so I think that's probably the best thing that I ever learned, standing inside a classroom and seeing for myself, that when my mind got quiet, that's what got reflected back from the classroom. So that's really what I wanted to share today, because I kept thinking about different activities, and I kept thinking that really whatever activities that you can pull out of the hat, as it were, the most important thing is whatever you pull out of the hat, as long as the mind that it's coming out of is as quiet as it can be and as still as it can be, then you can work from a place of joy. And I think that I don't know a single human being, let alone a teacher out there, that doesn't want to live more like that. So.
Thank you. We'll keep this in mind as I call on you, Barb, if you will, to, in a sense, respond to what Dean has laid out so beautifully for us and take it a bit further with your own presentation. And I'll remind everyone of two things. Barb's book, which most of you are very familiar with, is really a discussion about what Dean was talking about, creating an environment where that calmness and clarity is present for everyone. And then in the private forum for this webinar, there's a wonderful new handout that Barb prepared for you, and you're free to go on and print out that PDF. It's just 2 pages long. It's really lovely. So I'll just invite you, Barb, to make whatever comments you like for a few minutes here.
Well, it's really hard to say anything after that because I think Dean said everything that's in my heart and mind. And we are the temperature gauge. It all begins with us when we go into the classroom. And in the very early days when we were learning about this from Sid, we didn't have any training. We would go and hear him talk. And then it was whatever came through us to know what to do. We didn't have written curriculum. We didn't have activities, but somehow we knew that it was the space that we were in, the state of mind that we were in as we went into the classroom, that it was the most important thing. And it's invisible, and yet it means absolutely everything. I can remember going into the class, and when I was in I'd done my check-in, my personal check-in, and I was in a pretty good space. Everything went really well, just as Dean's describing, where when he got quiet, the kids got quiet. But there were those odd days where I felt like the Wicked Witch in the North. And when I did feel like that, I would tell the kids once we'd reached a place of relationship where they knew about state of mind through our kid-like conversations that we would have. And they knew that when I came like that they could be really still and that they could help me. So it became a symbiotic kind of relationship. And nothing was written down, nothing was planned, no activities were planned, but that one piece of being in a state of mind where you're open and clear and loving and full of joy was what set up the day. So Dean pretty much said it all. It's our state of mind as the educator going in that makes a huge difference. And when we are in that state of mind, then we begin to see the kids as whole. We see them as that change can happen, that what we do with them can make a difference. And if we listen to ourselves, as one of the presenters did 3 or 4 webinars ago, she said that the right words will come. And I thought that was so true. Every teacher has the common sense and wisdom inside to listen to themselves, and the absolute right words, the right activities, the teachable moment is always there when we're prepared to listen.
You know, Barb, one of the, I think, questions that people sometimes have when we're talking about state of mind, that really is simply the end product of living the principles. It's not something we create. It's not something that we do. It's just a shorthand way of saying that we have moved from learning the principles to living with that understanding. And it shows up in presence, in calmness. If I were to use some other words that are popular today, thought has fallen away. Mm-hmm. And we are ready for, I'll say, insights in the moment that absolutely can guide us in that process of teaching. And I tend to think that there is an art that really is a part of the best sharing of the principles that there is. By art, I don't mean it's contrived. I mean it is something that one is able to literally create with the student, and the change happens. The most amazing activities that I've ever heard of have come out of that kind of living of the principles in the teaching environment. And Deb Bell, in one of the last webinars, talked about how she had, children out in, I think it was the butterfly garden. And all of a sudden something occurred to her that started a whole new way of teaching and sharing the principles with the students. And it ended up in her getting the students posters and statements produced as a published book for the kids and for parents. So I want to just, kind of stress that, because state of mind is not created. It's the slogan that one uses for where we end up.
Yeah.
We are living the deep essence of the principles. So we need not be, fearful of that old term. That's been.
But it's relaxing back into who we are inside and letting inside come out and letting insight come out, because we're guided in what to do, just like Deb Bell was guided in that moment. It just, what you said there just reminded me of a story of a friend who has a 4-year-old granddaughter who is hearing impaired. And he always believed that reading stories with pictures was going to be helpful to her. And as he was reading along, the little girl said to her papa, she said, "Papa, tell me a story from your voice." And he listened. In that moment, he had an insight that she was telling him that there was another place that she could go to. If he had not done that and stopped and kept reading storybooks and not gone to telling stories from his voice, he would have missed an opportunity that has now turned into something quite remarkable with what's happening for this child who has hearing challenges. And I think that's true of everybody that's been in a classroom, can come up with examples like that are the in the moment, teachable moment activities that we, and I think that's the piece, is to be willing to shift in the moment to whatever comes, and it will be usually pretty magical and takes us to a new place. And that's the place to be in charge of, is to, and when I say in charge, I don't mean in a boxed in way, but to be mindful of and to listen to where our come from is and to go from that.
And that listening to is so important, because the child actually, in the story you told, was able to say how she preferred or wished to be taught. Mm-hmm. Tell me stories with your mouth, even though she's hearing impaired. And Brett, if I can perhaps put you a bit on the spot, because you have told wonderful stories of being able to, with your living and understanding of the principles at a deep level, experience greater comprehension and hearing despite some impairment. Does that child's story make sense to you, that she might say, forget the pictures, let me hear you with your mouth?
Yeah. What I'm hearing is there's a direction, and I get what I would call outside in quite a lot. But there are moments that I have an experience of being inside out, and that when the inside comes through, and then suddenly it reveals to me, and it teaches me something new in the moment that seem to take me forward in a very helpful and practical way. And I never know what it is in advance. So it really finds out that there's an intelligence behind it that I can allow myself to be guided by.
And what I think that's really helpful, because you're talking about what would be going on for the child in order to be able to say, I want to hear with your mouth. And what is it that she wants to hear? I presume it's that deep connection that you're talking about that allows her to hear more clearly and feel more deeply.
Yeah, there's a sense of, I don't think it's using the mouth or even the ears. It's just
Right.
I'm not even sure if it's any of the physical senses. So you could say the sixth sense, but I don't want to get to, don't want to over-spiritualize something. So the example that I had was when I was at the swimming pool.
Yes.
I was doing some swimming, and being the shape and size that I am, I stopped at one end to catch my breath. And there was a lady swimming alongside me, and she was coming towards me, and she stopped all of a sudden, and then she was looking at me, and we connected eyes, whatever you want to call it. So, and then she just suddenly started talking. Now, I wear a cochlear implant, but because I'm in a swimming pool, I take it out, though I basically become deaf. And as she was talking to me, I basically had the thought in my mind, I need to let her know that I'm deaf, I can't hear her, just so that she knows. But bless her, she carried on talking. I couldn't find a gap in which to interrupt her. So she just carried on talking. I just dropped my thought, just stayed in that space of connection. And then about 5 minutes later, when she finished, she said, "Thank you for listening."
Yes.
So that really got me to see another angle of what listening really means, because although I didn't hear any of the words she said, I didn't read every word she used her mouth, but I got a sense of what she was talking about. And the incredible thing was that I could see that she was feeling much more relaxed, much more at ease. There was something must have occurred for her, and then she just said thank you, and then just went off swimming again. So,
when you said it's a sixth sense, it's beyond all of the physical sensations. I was watching Barb's face, and Barb, you were just beaming. Will you talk about whatever caught your eye as Brett was relaying his understanding of the principles? It's really interesting because you talk about a child years ago, and now we have an adult who can articulate what it means to understand the principles and be in that child's role.
Yeah. What I heard and felt so deeply in what Brett was saying was connection. That's really what it's about, is connecting inside to inside with people. And the words don't matter, the activities don't matter, they're fun, they're engaging, but it's getting that deep connection, and it's the hidden piece. It's the place, it's not the one you can go like that and say, oh, there it is. But when it's there, you can go, oh, there it is. And that's what I heard Brett saying. It's that place of connection. It seems invisible, but it's so real. You could go in and into a classroom and touch it. I did accreditation of schools for a number of years, and we would go out for a week to do an external accreditation of a school. In 5 minutes, you knew whether or not that school was going to be accredited, not by all the things you looked at, but by walking through the front door and feeling it. And that's, we can feel that in our classrooms and know it's to listen to that, to listen in that deep way for that place of connection, heart to heart, soul to soul.
And that is living the principles versus learning the principles.
Yes.
So we never want to forget that there is the necessity for educators, classroom teachers, administrators, outside consultants going into school, to deeply learn the principles in whatever way makes sense to them. People have all kinds of different, quote, learning styles, but the living of the principles is what takes us to the next level of being able to share in a way that this kind of connection that you're talking about can happen. You happened to mention something about a temperature gauge when you were talking about state of mind, Barb. It's sort of like, you know, it could warn us. And Brett, if I can put you on the spot to please cue up the video of Susan Hill. Susan is at Catholic Charities as a psychologist. She's presented in this webinar before. She's a consummate trainer. She knows how to go about it. So I'm going to ask you to just play that little clip, because I think she was from a distance knowing somehow Barb was going to talk about a temperature gauge, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay.
So I wanted to also just share some metaphors that I like to use because I do it with the private clients and with the groups. One of the metaphors for health realization that I really like to use is that of a thermostat. Because a thermostat is different than a thermometer. You set the thermostat. Not that it doesn't change, not that it doesn't move, but a thermometer just goes wherever the heat is, etc. A thermostat, you set it. We set our own course when we realize that we are the thinker. So I like the metaphor of the thermostat. I also, and as I start moving into talking about some of the clients, in my private practice, I really don't deal with diagnoses. I have a private practice and probably see 3 to 5 people a week. And I don't really think, oh, well, you're this, you're that. In the clinical work that we have to do, since I'm the person that does the insurance and does the treatment plans, I have to think this person is reactive attachment, post-traumatic stress. And one of the things that the principles has really helped me for as a compass is, again, the compass just points straight toward their health. And do I have the ability to see their health in spite of the fact that people are like, well, this and well, that. And so a compass is a very important thing, a metaphor to use. The other one is, and you have this at your house too, you have thousands of chargers everywhere, you know, you have chargers laying everywhere. And one of the things that I've found really helpful is to be charged up with other people who understand the principles. And we go to a meeting like this, or the talk that Mark Sizer did, or Brady's given some really inspirational talks, or I go to a training where Kathy is. I hear the terms, I think about the principles, I hear the stories, and I get charged up again. So I think that's I love what you're doing here with these day-long seminars, because I think the charger is a really good thing. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the clients that we have. Every client that we have has at least 3 diagnoses. These are children, first grade through high school. Everybody has a psychiatrist. Nobody's on just one medication. Everybody's on 3 to 5 medications. And I think the most important thing for us to do is to realize that this is sometimes what it looks like on the outside, but I love the agate, because we start to see the innocence and the beauty and the wisdom of some of our little clients. I wanted to tell you just a couple of stories. One is a little boy. He's a cute little blonde boy with his hair kind of down to here, and he's kind of all just whirling around. He lives in poverty. There's some mental illness in the family, and let's just say he was having a very, very bad day. When you only weigh 50 pounds, it's hard to imagine how bad a day could look and how much damage somebody who only weighs 50 pounds could do, but it's a lot of damage. He was having a terrible, terrible day. His language is probably worse than most sailors. It was a bad day for him. As we were able to get him to a calm and quiet place and remember that he's not a bad kid and see his innocence, what he was able to say between sobs is, my dad says he's going to get a motorcycle. and my uncle was killed on a motorcycle last year. He didn't have words to say that when he was banging on the door and swearing and kicking and hitting. And so for us to be able to get him in a calm place and do that deep listening, we didn't fix him. We didn't fix the problem. But we really heard what he had to say, and we saw his innocence, and we saw his help.
I might just point out a little thing. Brady's sitting in this interview today, and he was the filmer of this. We did it many years ago, and it stayed in the can, so to speak. And, you know, as life would have it, there finally was the perfect place to use this little clip, Brady. So thank you. We were doing ongoing training with a major county department of human services with hundreds of employees and thousands of clients. So thank you. But isn't it interesting how this connection happens? Barb, is there anything more that you might like to conclude your presentation or comments with?
Oh, off the top of my head, I can't, there's nothing more. I'm so enjoying hearing what people are saying. And it just keeps taking me back to the lady that just spoke. All of her gadgets that she pulled out all spoke to essence. And there it is again. It comes inside out, always inside out. And it's making the connections to how when we're connected to that deeper place in ourselves, ready to listen, then we can elicit the deeper places in the students that we're serving.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Barb. And Nancy, if I could put you on the spot just a little bit, and I have to look here for your, okay. Nancy's in the trenches right now in a middle school, and she too is an activity queen, but she lives the principles beautifully also. What might you say or offer at this time, if I can put you on the spot, Nancy?
One thing that was occurring to me a little bit earlier is that I often have taught with another person, and you know, as teachers, we're sort of, we're so ingrained to have that lesson plan, know what we're going to be addressing that day. And clearly that has changed for me since I understood more about how I worked as a person and humans work and kids I'm with work. But it is still there. I still have this, this is what we're going to address today. And I so appreciate that pair. I can be kind of going on a point, and my partner can sometimes be noticing a change in the group or a feeling that's different, or notice someone who seems to be having a reaction that, because I'm, you know, innocently trying to get on with my point, or, you know, whatever I might be doing. I found that to be very, very helpful. Obviously, it's not always possible, but when it is possible, I think having that another person to be co-training, co-teaching with has just been super helpful for me. I have a classroom right now that is for children who do not take a performance music. And also it's for kids who don't make it in music class. They just, behavior-wise, it's skewed both behaviorally and more males than females. I only say that because I get this look from other teachers like, oh no, you don't have those kids, do you? And I often will just say, you know, when I walk into the classroom 100% of the time, I can do my own, as Barb was saying, you know, kind of your own temperature. And I can tell how those lessons are going to go. My favorite thing is when I have a language with the kids. It takes a while, you know, I do small lessons, and try to also, again, still get to my curriculum, but I can tell right away when a student has something that they want to share, especially if it's related to the principles, because they get so excited to have a deeper understanding about how they operate. And I'm trying to think of an activity, Kathy. Do you have a sense of the kind of thing you're wondering or asking for?
Not necessarily. Over the years, what have you consistently used with middle school kids that just seems to be helpful?
Well, and this is not an original activity. I know I've done it with Gary, and he probably did it with you before that, but I really like the activity. Have a student, usually you'll get a volunteer who is kind of outgoing and pretty sure they're going to be successful at whatever they do, and ask them to fold a letter, put it in an envelope, and set it aside. And you'll have another child timing it. And they do great, maybe 10 seconds. And then have a discussion about how our thoughts can get busy and different kinds of things kids' thoughts get busy with. And as you're doing that, have the person put things on like winter gloves, a winter hat, goggles over their eyes, big, hard to get into jacket, and then hand them the letter to fold and have someone time it. Again, it's very difficult. And we talk about how sometimes our thinking and our losing the connection that we have with the wisdom and the power really, really, really is in our control to kind of to recognize and start to pull away. Kids completely get that, and they think it's hilarious when their friends can't operate something simple like putting a letter in an envelope, and then they try it and they can't either.
Thank you. That's great. Now that's a teacher thinking on her feet, just going back over time and offering something up for us. So perfect. Thank you. And Deb, I'm going to ask you to begin your presentation of an activity.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? It's a whirlwind of a day. I just had my kids in testing. So they're in the computer lab doing a reading test, and I have to get back by 11. So we've been writing, kind of working through curriculums, and we've been looking for books. And we always start each lesson with a story, and then we connect it with the health after the story's read. And the book that one of my favorites is called Only One You by Linda Kranz. I just bought this one off Amazon, and it's You Be You, it's called, and they're very simple books for young children. But it's not just the content of the story. Inside each cover, they have sayings, and the sayings say things like smile often, understand that everyone you meet is just trying to fit in, help them feel at ease, and anything is possible. Be sure to compliment. It's just covered with positive sayings and things for the kids on the front and the back. So before I read the story, I make a copy of all these, and then I cut them all out, and I have them laying on a table in the front of the room. And I start my story or my day by reading the title of Only One You and ask them what that means. And then they have a discussion about what it means to be only one you, and that they're special, and they have that place inside that no one else it has. And when you read the story, it's very simplistic, and I want to show you how simplistic. Always be on the lookout for a new friend. That's how simplistic it is. And it's not just the words in the story. Look for beauty wherever you are. Keep the memory with you. And it shows the little fish and what they're finding. Blend in when you need to. When you have a chance, stand out. Stand out when you have a chance. And the point is a mom and a dad fish telling the little baby what to expect in life. And it's such a wonderful, it's a parents trying to speak the wisdom to a fish. And so what we do is we turn this story into one we're relating from the fish to them. Does that make sense? Okay. And what we do with this then is when we're all done with the story, if I can read it really quick. Find your own way. You don't have to follow the crowd. Know when to speak. Know when to listen. No matter how you look at it, there is so much to discover. If you make a wrong turn, circle back. If something gets in your way, move around it. Set aside some quiet time to relax and reflect every day. And then appreciate art. It's all around you. Make wishes on the stars in the nighttime sky. Thank you for listening, Mama said. We hope you will remember. Papa winked and whispered, we know this is a lot for you to think about. Adri, that's the name of their son or daughter or fish, whatever, did a backward somersault and smiled. He was excited to go out into the world with what had just happened. Wait for me, he shouted to his friends. When we're done with this, then we talk about how everybody's different and how we all have our own thinking inside of us. And then we have a fish, and we have the kids design their own fish for them that speaks to them. And then I let them pick out with all those different words, one that speaks to them, a word or a saying or a phrase that really speaks to them. Smiles warm the heart, they are contagious. That might speak to someone. So they cut it out, they put it in the center of their fish, and then they design the fish to make them special. And then we put them up on the door, and we write on there that on the door we put on there, there's only one you. And the kids just love it. I mean, we've done variations of it. We've done it with a flower, we've done, and every petal, the kids, everybody in the class writes something positive about the student. We've done other things too, but this is really simple, and it speaks to their heart, and they can find what speaks to them too. So you're not telling them what to pick, they are choosing what to pick, what relates to them, which is one of the things I like about being able to let them. And we also talk about the wisdom and bringing out their healthy core, and that they're a knower, and that that they know what's inside of their brain and inside of them. So those are all things that kind of are in the discussion. This is usually maybe the third or fourth lesson in the series. Sometimes it's later, depending on the group. So we're starting our first group session this afternoon.
This is the real world. This is the teacher on a run. She dropped.
Yeah, and I'm good. I've got about 5-10 more minutes.
I'll ask you to listen in. I see a person who is tracking right with you. And so, Marika, I'm going to unmute you, because in the sense you and Deb are talking about the same topic. And I want to remind everybody that when Deb Bell was speaking, her students are 2nd and 3rd grade. She keeps them for 2 years in a looping situation and teaches the principles as mental health curriculum required by the state of Wisconsin. She made an argument in her district so that school board, that tiny little school board in this very rural, poor area, said, go for it, teacher. And she created that. So when she showed us the apple core last time, she's essentially talking about, the natural wisdom, the spiritual dimension of our essence, if you will, that is there. And this book is kind of the beginning lead into that. You're not very far into the school year, so you're starting with something. It's a little bit ordinary in the sense that kids are familiar with having stories read and loving a wonderful feeling that comes both from the teacher and the story itself. So, Marika, you were in a sense on this same topic years ago. And when we put out this call today, there was the craziest response that I got from Marika. She said, oh my goodness, I've got something, and I'll let you tell what it is. And in just a couple of minutes, we're going to have Brett cue up your PowerPoint. So make a beginning comment. You'll still be on the screen, and Brett will be able to get ready to play your PowerPoint in just a moment.
Okay, thank you. I love that we're coming at this all from different angles, the same idea, but working with children at different ages. And the way you're sharing, Deb, with the youngsters, I love your creativity, and it's fantastic to hear your inspiring ideas. Thank you for those. I love sharing with students little gems that are meaningful to me and to them, possibly. And one of the things I started years ago, well, first of all, normally my work involves working with individual students in my office or in their classroom. But I was on several occasions invited in to teach a series of classes for 75 minutes per class. And it was a 10-class series that I was invited in to do. This was years ago, and I used the curriculum called Self-Esteem is for Everyone that was developed by Krista Campsell and Jeff Tim, which was amazing in those days because it was a springboard for sharing the three principles as best we could at that time. So the main topic I wanted to talk about, what was important to me with the students, was the reflection piece. First of all, reflecting my state of mind going in and drawing out the best I could with the students. And we'd begin the lessons and chat with them. And at the end of every class, after the activities, after discussion, I would ask them to do a little entry in a reflection journal that was private between them and me. So each child could feel comfortable to say what they wanted to say. And I would respond each week to what they had said. So it was a chance for me to get my finger on the pulse of what the students were hearing and what they were learning. And it was tremendously beneficial for me in knowing where to begin the next class, or if I had not made something clear enough, or it was a great starting point. And for them, because it helped them to crystallize what was valuable for them. And then at the very end of my series of 10 classes, I had them do an activity where they shared what was most meaningful for them, what was helpful for them. And what they did was they developed posters and with a slogan on it, and then each student was able to stand up and share their learning with the rest of the class. So that was our way of celebrating at the end. So what I've asked Brett to start for us is the little video where we've just done a quick PowerPoint showing you examples of their posters. Okay, common sense was a big theme. And the curriculum was called Self-Esteem is for Everyone. So that word also pops up because we use that as a term for our natural well-being. In those days, that was the buzzword. So you'll see that in some of the posters. Go ahead.
And you can just move your finger because he can see.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And these are all done by 13-year-olds. These are 8th graders. Okay.
If you just go, yeah.
So the students often would comment on how their confidence just soared when they realized that self-esteem was something naturally inside. Next. Okay. Next. Okay.
In some cases, you have, it looks like comments that were evaluation or final comments from students about what the learning meant for them. Is that what's pasted on the side here?
That's right, right. This program helped me stop losing my temper quickly, it also stopped fights with my brother and sister.
Now, this is a busy teacher's good way of keeping records. I always say document the outcome of what you're doing. She's got the poster and the individual child's comment at the end of the class. That's smart.
Okay. And I just love this too, you know, like to this day, even for me, you know, like if I'm struggling with an issue or something, you know, just put it aside, go for the beautiful feeling. You know, the kids just summed it up so beautifully for me. Go for the sunlight. So yeah, focus on the good ones. Kids are quite the artists. And yeah. Oh, I love their pictures. You know, I've always loved children's artwork. So yeah, let go of that hot potato. Okay. Next. So it's pretty self-explanatory that things, you know, listen to your good stuff, you know, it doesn't come from out there, it comes from inside. Okay, next. Okay, and that goes back to the compass piece that the lovely psychologist shared with us. The compass is a good guide. Okay, thank you. Throw away your bad feelings, you'll be a lot happier. So, very simplistic pictures depicting their learning. Okay, next. And this is all the words that self-esteem means to the student. So self-explanatory here. Okay, next. This is our last one. Positive thoughts can grow like flowers in a garden. So don't let the weeds outgrow them, which I thought was lovely too. So yeah, so inspiring to see what the students come up with. Oh, it's so valuable when you take a moment to pause and see what was important in this lesson or in my day or in life. And nice way to start each class. It's a nice way to end each class. So that's my sharing.
Thank you. It was just so interesting that she could send the photos of all of this. And what year did you do this?
This was 1995. I was shocked. I had done more recent work, but I didn't manage to capture the students' work as well. So they make off with it very quickly.
One day, Barb told me she had hauled out 40 boxes of her educational files some years ago when she first retired. And, you know, that's kind of a teacher's world, isn't it? That we collect lots of things that we worry. Sometimes we even think about, do I need to put this in my estate plan, you know? Should it be passed on? Because we value experience with students and so on. And I'm checking, Sue Wolfram, we will ask you next, not this moment, but I'm going to go to one more participant and then come to you because I know you have a time frame today too. And I think, Krista, it would be appropriate to come to you because you had authored that self-esteem curriculum with Jeff years and years ago and see reasons now clearly to be updating that. So perhaps you want to respond just a bit about that and then share whatever activity you brought today. Let's see, we are not hearing you. Would you turn your mic on? And I'm going to go to I have you on. Can you hear now, Krista?
I can hear you.
Great. We're ready.
Okay.
We're passing notes here. So your response, that presentation about outcomes with students with that old curriculum.
Yeah.
What you brought us today.
Okay. We had so much fun with that Self-Esteem is for Everyone handbook, and the posters that Marika showed really brought back good memories. We did similar things, although I wasn't as savvy to keep them all, but really getting the children to reflect, as Marika said, and then consolidate their learning and with art was just really fabulous. I remember really early on, like we worked with groups that were put together because they were struggling, and we would use everything. We had little bits of money, and we'd buy snacks and drinks, and even being able to, in a civil way, share snacks and drinks became part of the learning. So it was all, as my colleague that I co-taught with, he'd say, it's all grist for the mill. So we just used everything to help us, as people are saying today, about showing people the essence. I have little grandsons that just love those crystals, and I just love that agate with the gem inside. That's so beautiful. Just so many wonderful ideas this morning. It's just fabulous. And I agree, teachers have a real art and knack of being inspired and then creating something out of that they can use again and again. So out of the My Guidance side intermediate curriculum, there's activities in every chapter, and yes, every single activity came out of a moment of inspiration or fun with a particular group. For example, I had a little, the Lone Pine Publishing came and filmed my classroom one year, and it was a class, I worked with grade 4s, and I also worked with high school kids. And the night before they came to film the grade 4s, I had this idea about balloons. So I went in the morning and bought balloons for everyone, and we had such fun. It's quite a funny video, if you can imagine. And that the activity is blow up a balloon, don't tie it, then let the air out. The air squeaks, hisses, and fizzles out. How is this like you're thinking? And then when you take your focus away, the thought just fizzles out. A thought alone has no life of its own. But we really had fun. We were all laughing, and they were blowing balloons, and they were fizzling out all over the classroom, and they'd say funny things that they really knew weren't worth hanging on to. So it was a lovely, and kids remembered it. I know these kids later, I was working in the high school, and they're like, remember what all the fun we used to have? Another one is, I ran out of balloons. I've used all my balloons, but I do have a kaleidoscope. And kaleidoscopes are really fun. It's like, turn the kaleidoscope and notice how it changes what you see. Oh, I missed that. You have one?
Oh, yeah. Of
course.
Oh,
good. Notice how it changes what you see. The same is true for us. When you feel serious, the world looks serious. Turn the kaleidoscope. When you have worried thoughts, the world feels and looks unsafe. Turn the kaleidoscope again. When you feel happy, the world looks like a beautiful place. Every one of us has our own world that we see with our own eyes. So where do your feelings come from? From the kaleidoscope of your own thoughts. When you notice a new thought, the feeling changes. This is how insights can help us out. So that's really fun. And we have lots of these so the children can share them. That's good for a little bit older. And then this is an audio, a CD audio of Second Chance. And I played this one summer. I see Rita's on the line. I worked with Rita and other people in Hawaii, and was the summer school teacher for children who were mandated to attend summer school. And what I did was played the audio tape, which was, perfect, because there we are in Hawaii. The tape is of Second Chance, but it's recorded by a Hawaiian actor. So it has that lovely lilt of the Hawaiian voice. So played this, and I brought from Canada, I brought beautiful sets of art pens. So we would play a chapter of the audio, and I gave, it was all boys, one girl, gave them all these beautiful art pens and paper, and they drew and listened while they listened. And it was really powerful. It was like not a whole lot needed to be said after that, but this is how we started our day. And as you can imagine, the feeling in the classroom really was quite different after we listened to that and had some relaxing art. And then we would go on to do whatever English activities were related to that. But that was also really fun, and it kind of speaks to that artistic piece and the reflective piece as well. So love all the ideas. They're fabulous. Us teachers love inspired ideas, and I think we're seeing lots today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krista. That it would be so great to just be able to go on just talking about each one of your comments, but I'm going to move to Sue Wolfram, and you are unmuted, Sue. So if you would begin to share whatever you planned today. She has come out of her classroom and is on a bit of a break. So you see the background that she's in, and we welcome you. Thanks for being here on your busy day, this first 10 days of school.
No, it's great. And I just want to tell Krista I got to start her curriculum this week. So I'm doing 2 third grade classrooms and 1 4th grade classroom. So I get to modify and tweak the lesson and really get it perfect by the 3rd time I do it. So, and adjust it with the kids. And so I'm enjoying that, and it's going well. And I guess I could start with one little thing, one little visual I've added to the first lesson. I'll do that one first. Is after we do the apple core and talk about your inner wisdom, and I've also been reading Pransky's book to the kids, What is Wisdom? That's a wonderful, wonderful book. I made this visual of, hopefully you can see it. It's like a sun, and it's got all these good sunny thoughts of your wisdom inside. I can calm myself down. Today can be a good day. I can do this. I'm smart. I am a good person. I can shine. And actually, I get to this on the second half of the lesson, where we talk about, well, what gets in the way of our wisdom. So we start with the bright sun, and then I have the kids each get, or 10 of the kids get a cloud that says something like, I am stupid, and they put it over it. And then all I do is make mistakes, and they all come up one by one then, and I say, okay, see what happened to our son. And we talk about that. And then after I get them filled with all these clouds, no one likes me, I can't do it, I'm going to push this child, but all those negative thoughts. Then I say, okay, but is the sun still there? And we talk about that the sun is still there. We just need to move those clouds out of the way. So anyway, that's just one thing, one visual I've added to Krista's wonderful curriculum, and I'm excited to be doing that. So, and then with the other lessons that I've done with 3rd grade, and I would have to say, I think one of your children, one of your students, Marika, must have been in my 3rd grade class, because the one with the flower poster, that's what I've been doing with them. I have the students all come up to the rug, and they all have one of these types of thoughts. This is about noticing your thoughts. So I never do anything right. No one likes me. I can be a good friend. I'm a special person. So there's the positive thoughts and the more negative, less helpful thoughts. So then I have them all standing up on the carpet, and I say, okay, your thoughts are like a beautiful garden. And we have the flowers that are the wonderful good thoughts that make you feel good inside. And then we have the weeds that are those thoughts that just get in the way of the flowers and make you not feel so good inside. So I tell them, if you think the card that I gave you is a weed, I want you to sit down. So then the weeds sit down, and I get my little watering can, and I come around and I say, okay, I'm going to water the flowers, but I'm not going to water the weeds. And then we talk about that. And so we talk about if you water the flowers and just let those weeds die out, the flowers will grow, they'll take over the garden, and you will feel good and beautiful inside. And the interesting thing is, after I taught this last year, I don't know how many weeks had gone by, and I was talking to a little third grader who was having some difficulties with worried thoughts about something he had seen on TV. And I said, well, what do you think? He says, I just can't stop my thoughts about that. And I said, well, what do you think you can do? He says, I think I need to quit watering them. And I was like, yes, I think so. So he had obviously been listening and got the message. So it's kind of the idea, like your student had, about nurturing the positive and letting the negative go away. So those are the two things I brought to share.
It's just wonderful to hear the energy that you have. This is sort of the living of the principles that allows you to share it in the way that really reaches the kids where they are at. You know, we talked at the beginning, Sue, about how sometimes activities can be a slippery slope. And now I'm speaking about kind of in the whole of the population of adults who have learned the principles. There's always this penchant for people to say, well, how do I change my thinking? You know, like they get too much into the content of the thinking. From a second grade student's perspective, what have they been saying to you about once, because you're just pointing them to the fact that they are thinking and pointing them to the fact that they have a choice. What have they said to you that shows you that they are in fact just noticing what's going on with themselves and being able to, in a sense, shift without doing anything?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I've just heard little bits and pieces of my lesson coming back to me here and there where they say, oh, or I'll ask them, you know, just because somebody thinks that, does that mean it's true? And they'll say, no, I guess not. Or the one child who takes a piece of paper and throws it in the wastebasket on the way into my room. And I say, what are you doing? And he says, I'm throwing away my negative thoughts before I come in. And the little boy who said, I shouldn't water that thought. And just little comments like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's what I have to go on, what I see these days. I would like to try to use some kind of like Deb Bell's evaluation with the smiley faces, or if I could get hold of a copy of that, Deb, I think she left already, but if somehow I could get a copy of her simple evaluation for the students to fill out, I would love to do that, at least with, for sure with my fourth grade group. Yeah. But, and I do have to say that I really related to Deb Bell talking in her other message to us when she talked about how she's been teaching for, I don't know, 30 some years, and this is what keeps her going. And I would have to agree that, you know, here I've been doing this now for, I don't know, 35 years. And it's been in these last 6 years, I think, that I have been able to see the importance of teaching this to children, that it's renewed my passion for teaching. You know, it's like, okay, reading strategies, math strategies come and go, but this has renewed my passion for teaching, and this is why I keep going and don't retire, because I still want to keep teaching this to all these students, and I think if we keep it from a young age up, that they will have it by the time they get to middle school and high school where they really need it.
One thing that's important about your story, Sue, is that she perseveres despite all odds. And by that, I mean the district has been in and out of doing things to bring the principles to kids, but mostly it's an uphill battle. And as administration has changed, budgets have changed, and so on. But her perseverance is just incredible. Once in a while, over the years, Sue, I can remember you putting out an all-employee email If an administrator sent out a message to all adults employed in the school system, I have known her to respond to that and send her whole message to the entire district staff. And yet that is bucking the system, so to speak. Normally, you do not have license to do that, but she had the courage in a very appropriate way to, for example, encourage people to be part of an upcoming training or begin to take this to children. So she's a real trooper in that regard and a very fun teacher. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Gary, if I can come to you. Gary, you're on.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, as Nancy was presenting, she told a bit about some of the activities that the two of us have done. And I guess that in general, my work as a school social worker, bringing activities to groups mostly, and some classrooms, was the activities were helpful to give kids a chance to engage, to connect with me because I was not every day in those classrooms. I would just come in occasionally. So it had to be a little bit more entertaining just to engage them. But one of the things that I really found, I became known as the Play-Doh guy after a period of time. And so I would bring clay, modeling clay in case people aren't familiar with what Play-Doh is. It comes in a little container like this and a very portable little units. And so the activity would involve just having them take out the clay and play with it, and then just talk to them while they're doing that. And some of them were a little, especially if they're in 9th grade or 10th grade, they may not have played with that since they were in 2nd grade or 3rd grade. So a little bit of getting over the discomfort of being, socially conscious about that. But anyway, as they got into playing with it, I would ask them, so how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you really trying to figure out how to do this? And they said, well, no, I mean, obviously this is very simple and it's very, and it was fun. So it was engaging for them. And then I would ask them to create your favorite animal. And so they would go ahead and do whatever came to mind, and some were better at it than others. So the question would be, so why did you choose that animal? And so getting into the discussion about thought and about creativity, and where does creativity come from, and where does your state of mind come from, and pointing out the fact that they were mostly just enjoying themselves. And so talking about that state of mind as the kind of the reference point for what we're trying to do as we understand these principles is to get to a point where we just have a very positive and enjoyable state of mind, and that we're at peace, we're creative, all those kinds of things that we could lecture about. But in this case, it was an experience where they actually had the experience of enjoying themselves and being creative and being at peace and having fun, really. And so that was the kind of the benchmark then. That's where we want to go. And so it was quite simple in that way to start out the whole conversation in an experiential way. And now that I'm retired, I'm working with individuals and as a counselor, and I'm still taking my Play-Doh, and I've been working with a little 2nd grade girl, and so she is very creative, and so she went beyond the Play-Doh thing, so she started juggling with it. So we then got into juggling, and eventually I bought some juggling things to actually work on that. And so how do we best learn how to juggle? It's when our state of mind is good and we're having fun. So it just kind of keeps flowing. So I guess everybody's comment is that it's an inside out deal. and all these activities really just kind of flow from somewhere, and that is our modeling and our support and our connection with kids, I think. And so that's I guess what I'd have to say.
Yeah. And I'll go to you, Nancy. Yes. Oops. Just a second. Okay, please continue, Nancy.
Sure. So I love that activity. I miss Gary being there with me, but I wanted to tell everyone, and Gary too, I love Pinterest, so all the crazy things there are on there, but I saw this activity to take Play-Doh and put it into a balloon and make a stress ball. So that's now how I end the activity, is let them take it with them in a balloon as a little stress thing. So I just thought I'd add that.
Great. Rita, I'm going to call on you for some observations. You've been watching all of this. What comes to mind?
The beauty of who and what we really are, and how all of these wonderful teachers and counselors have discovered that more for themselves and cannot help, as Sue said, but share that and to help draw that out of students in whatever setting, you know, to see that we already are what we seek, that it's natural to us, it's innate to us, and that we're always, in essence, living from that. It's just as we really realize that there's only one thing that can keep us from really being in the state of mind of health, you know, being present, is how we're using this gift of thought. And we all misuse it, if you want to put it that way, at times. And that simplicity of seeing it's moment to moment. So walking into a classroom, I like, can't remember who was talking about being in the chaos, walking into the chaos, which I've done, we've all done. And then being in that place of quiet and calm and presence, that's always the essence of who we are. And the power of that to connect with anybody, but with students, they know the authenticity of that, and that's what I'm hearing. We all know that it's something intuitively that is that rings true, and students know. They know when you walk in and you're really there. And that when Krista was in Hawaii, one of the things that I was always so struck by was her presence, but also that unconditional respect for whoever the students, wherever they were at, and the love. You know, to me, it's always been about love, and love unconditional.
Thank you so much, Rita. If you've ever walked or sat beside Rita, you know what she's talking about. She's in that state so much of the time of just living and sharing. She agreed to set her alarm clock with us today. I'm sure it was like 4 in the morning or something crazy. Thank you. I'm going to come to Brady in just a moment to both share an activity with us and to conclude this session. But I wanted to just give you a quick, just a couple minutes of samples of things that have been real tried and true activities. Gary Johnson started learning and teaching the principles, and wasn't long before he just flat out admitted, I never realized I was a thinker. He'd gone all through his adult life, become a social worker, and never realized that he himself was the thinker. And so we came up with an activity that never fails. And if you just go and get this adding machine tape, And you can flip it around the room, give everybody a little piece, take a minute or two, and ask folks to, on their paper, jot down a word for every thought that comes up across their windshield. So in a minute, it ranges from somebody say, just 2 thoughts to, maybe 35. The biggest I've ever seen was 64. And then you get to make the point that the person can stand back and watch themselves thinking. We're something more than our thought. What is that? And we're so good at that we can even go to that paper and circle thoughts that we know we have gotten stuck on in that 1 minute. Where did you spend more time? And it's just a really fun, very simple way of just cementing right there that you experience the flow of thought. And from there, then you can go into the deeper kinds of things. When Brett talked about sixth sense, experiencing that deeper essence, which is really, wisdom in its fullest. That's what I wanted Brady to share an activity about as we close this session. He's a consummate, I think I want to say, captor of students. He deals with some of the most challenging situations, sometimes very short time frames that the students are there. And he's just got this ability to create in the moment. So Brady, would you share a closing activity for us, and we'll just bring this wonderful session to a close with your final word.
Absolutely. Let me, just because this is going to deal with some light, let me see if I can turn this overhead light off and still show up on my camera. Hang on a second. Can everybody see me okay? Okay. One of the things that I've learned is that and just watching all of you, there are these phenomenal amount of ways to articulate what it is that we know and how to help others experience it themselves. And I feel like I've made it really dark in here. Am I really blurry? Why can't I hear anybody? Oh, you guys are all muted. I get that.
You are good. I'll leave my mic on if you need any more guidance. The stage is yours.
Anyway, one of the things that I do is I find that oftentimes I get this very difficult moment where a child is totally consumed by their thoughts and they are not functioning in any capacity in school. So they are full of tears, they are completely angry, they are completely shut down and not at all aware that they are thinkers in the world because they are being consumed by everything on the outside of them. And so I have them in my office, and this is not my first activity I do with them, but as I expose to them to that they are thinkers and they understand that they can do that, and they start to calm. And I do that through a variety of different strategies and just get them to calm down. And I ask them from the moment they walk in, on a scale of 1 to 5, or show them that chair, the 5 chairs, what chair are they in? And then as I visit with them, they'll slowly shift, but they haven't gone anywhere. They've just sat in my office, and as we've talked, they've shifted. Now, what I'll do is I'll take a candle, and I'll use this as an analogy, and I'll say, when you were born, a light was started in you. And this light exists in all of us. We all have a light that's started, and it burns inside of us until the day that we die, so throughout our entire life. And there's nothing that we can do to take out the light. If we cover it up, it's still there. It simply gets covered up. And what I use that analogy is, I'm going to move my camera here a little bit. You'll still hear me talk, but I wanted to show this. I talk to them, I take an ordinary coffee cup, and I talk to them about how their thinking is like this cup. And I talk about how if I took all the lights out in the room, could we find our way around the room with just this little light? Could we find our way? And to prove it, I turn out the lights and I show them. I said, people used to write letters by candlelight. They light their rooms when they move around the house by candlelight. And it's just a single light. And they come to acknowledge that, yes, their eyes would adjust and they could find their way with a single candle. And sometimes I'll do it. If I don't have a candle, I'll use a lighter to do this analogy. And as we visit, and this takes 4 or 5 minutes, so it's not a particularly fast awareness, but I try to explain to them that their thinking is like a coffee cup. It's like a lampshade. And if we took this light that we could find our way in this room or around our house with, and we brought our thinking down, and this is our thinking, what's happening to the light? And they visually get to see that this cup is now interfering with the light. The light is the wisdom. The light is the common sense. The light is the ability to find your way. And the cup comes down, and the light slowly starts to not expand around the room. It doesn't illuminate the area that it was illuminating a few moments ago, but it's still very, very much above the candle. And they can still find their way. And I say, as you struggle and as you reach those depressive states and you have that continual thought of, I need to hurt myself, or I'd better be off dead, or nobody loves me, or whatever those thoughts are that they're having, they're bringing this lampshade down. And what ends up happening is they lose their ability to find their way. And if we took this cup and we set it down, the light that's being emitted is just the light around the bottom of the cup. Now, if we bring this down even further, if this was a child underneath this cup, they would only see their toes. They could only light the way the distance of about 6 inches in front of them, and the world would become a scary place. The world would become uncertain. We would start to become angry. We would become defensive. We would become, we would put up our boundaries, and we would become scared of everything that moved around us because we can't see it. Because of these thoughts, we've reduced our ability to navigate those wonderful aspects of life that exist around us every day. But the light is still there. The candle is still lit. We're still able to light every day. The only way this candle goes out is if we set the cup down and the light's extinguished. And what happens is that I talk to them. I'm like, okay, so this is your thinking. This is your negative thinking. This is the thoughts that keep you held into that one place. What happens? What do we need to do to be able to see the rest of the world again? What do we need to do to find our way? And they tell me, well, you need to lift the cup. And that's where I bring the analogy back to them. So we need to lift the cup. Is it that simple? And do we need to lift our thoughts? Do we need to let go of that thinking? Is it as simple as lifting the cup and allowing ourselves to see our insight again and our common sense and our wisdom? And the only way that this goes out is if we commit suicide or we're killed in an accident or something like that. But that light is always the same brightness. It never diminished. It was our thinking that kept us from seeing our own health, and we became consumed by what we believed was all outside of us, and we became afraid of it, and we became defensive, and we became where we didn't trust people. But this light is the same light that they had when they were a baby, and it's the same light they'll have as an old person. It grows brightly every day. It's only thing that changes is our thinking.
It's never too late to lift the cup.
It's never too late to lift the cup. That's an outstanding way of looking at it.
And the truth is, we can trust that the light is there. And that's what allows us to let go of the thought.
Yes.